Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C-Dot that knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. Well, it's Christmas time again, and you know what that means. It's time to go back to the Evergreen Forest with a look at the third season of the Raccoons. Upon rewatching this season, I do remember quite a number of episodes, though not as many as I thought. But that doesn't mean that this season was a bad one. In fact, I'd say that this was a lot better than the last season was. But we should get into these episodes before long, or else I won't get to talk about my next Christmas movie. So, without further ado, let's discuss the next season of the Raccoons. When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night. The first episode of the season is one of many in a long series of mystery episodes. Lady Baden-Baden has agreed to allow Cyril Sneer to use a priceless jewel that's been in her family for a long time called the Prism of Zenda, for a movie he's funding about the explorer who found the prism. However, when Cyril reveals the prism and the announcement of making the movie at a press conference, it's immediately stolen and it's up to Bert and the others to find the prism so that they can get the award that Cyril made for whoever finds the prism. This episode is one that I remember less for the mystery itself and more for the comedic moments in it. It's honestly one of the few funny episodes in the series, and has some great continuity with Mr. Knox still being in a relationship with Lady Baden-Baden, which is something that was rare in animated series at the time. I'd say that the best part of the episode is the ending with Bert finding the prism and Cyril wanting to return it by sneaking it into Lady Baden-Baden's house so that he doesn't have to tell her and Mr. Knox that he didn't get the prism insured in case it went missing or was stolen. Only to find out that Mr. Knox had given him a fake prism the whole time and sends Cyril to jail for the night. It's funny in the sense that after 4 specials and 2 seasons, Cyril finally gets some karmic punishment that isn't from the main characters that are usually trying to stop him from hurting the forest or their business. A great comedic episode, even if the mystery is kind of weak. When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night. This is an episode that has 2 pretty good messages in it that I think are a lot more positive than when other shows try to use them. A famous explorer named Sir Malcolm Havelock comes to the Evergreen Forest to give a lecture about his most recent expedition and the discovery he made on said expedition. At the lecture, he mentions where he plans to go on his next expedition, and Bert plans on convincing Sir Malcolm to go on the expedition with him as his assistant. While at the same time, Cyril plans on funding the expedition mostly to get all of the money from whatever Sir Malcolm brings back. This episode has 2 messages that have been done before, but I find that this episode has done the messages right with how they were written. There is the generic be careful of meeting your heroes because they may not be who you think they are, but there's also a good message added to the first one of giving people a second chance, as this episode shows that Sir Malcolm didn't want his fame, but that his fans just created that fame from how realistic his books were written. It's something I think more screenwriters should take more from this episode, as I feel that we have too many celebrities that are portrayed as terrible people without knowing the full story. With that being said, I'm aware that not all celebrities are good people, but there are some that are decent human beings that got stuck in bad situations, and that's what I feel they did with Sir Malcolm, and they even have Bert forgive and see him in a different light. When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night. This is an episode with a different kind of message about the dangers of addiction and competition going too far. Cyril is trying to sell off his potato chip factory to Mr. Knox, but he has to increase the sales of his business before he sells it. So he and the pigs create a contest where the grand prize is a brand new top-of-the-line bike that Bert wants desperately and starts acting like a crazed loon to get it. To the point that he wrecks Ralph and Melissa's bike, but when he wins the prize, he trades the bike in and replaces Melissa and Ralph's bike. The episode is a good example of taking things too far to win something, where the prize is often at times rigged just so that you never win and just end up buying the same product over and over again, making the company more money. I know many of us have probably dealt with buying a bunch of Pepsi products to win that fancy new video game system, only to lose over and over again. But in this episode, it does have a good ending where when Bert does win the bike, he instead sells it so that he can buy Melissa and Ralph a new bike after he destroys their old one. It's a heartwarming episode that takes the idea of addiction and makes it more relatable to kids instead of taking the obvious route with the message and making it about drugs. When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night. In this episode, we go from the dangers of addiction to the dangers of getting involved with the wrong group of people. Bert and Cedric stop by the Evergreen dirt bike race to get a story for the Evergreen Standard. There they meet Bix Wheelie and his group of friends who Bert finds are cool and hip with how free-spirited they are. Unfortunately, Bix ends up being too free-spirited and leads to several misunderstandings, as well as Bix accidentally setting fire to Cyril's garage, almost killing one of Bix's friends in the process. I remember watching this episode a lot as a kid, and I didn't really have that much of an opinion on it at the time. I didn't love it or hate it, but now that I can say that it's okay, I feel like I've seen better episodes that tackle this topic and that it doesn't do anything new or special with the concept. Though this episode did give us more great moments with Cedric and Bert.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
Another episode I remember watching a lot as a kid that is very predictable, but it does have some great set pieces and a decent atmosphere. Melissa and Bert are out by Evergreen Lake enjoying a picnic and taking in the beautiful scenery. They then see what can only be described as a monster in the lake, which Melissa is able to get a picture of. This leads to Melissa and Bert printing the story against Ralph's wishes, and eventually Cyril taking advantage of the craze with planning on building a park near the lake and selling lots of merchandise. Which leads to Melissa questioning if she made the right choice in releasing the story. I don't think I need to mention that the monster is clearly a reference to the Loch Ness Monster, or that the big twist is that the pigs created the monster to help Cyril scam people out of their money. Despite this, I do like the episode for having some really good atmospheric moments and for having really good backgrounds. Even the design of the monster, while a little silly at times, does have a charm to it that reminds me of the character designs in something like Dragon Tales. A good episode, even if the premise is a little predictable.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This one is just a cute story that's only ruined by the stupid have to hide the truth from the person trope. The pigs get a surprise visit from their mother, who comes to tell them that she lost their family house due to a recent hurricane and needs their help to buy a new one since they've been lying to her about them being rich business pigs? At the same time, the pigs are helping Cyril get a car he bought ready for an antique car competition. However, when Cyril sees Bert and Schaefer helping Mrs. Pig get her car fixed, he discovers it's a rarer car than the one he has and wants the pigs to steal it so he can enter both of them into the contest so that he is certain to win. Which leads to more wacky shenanigans involving Cyril's car being destroyed and having to make a deal with Mrs. Pig so that they both get what they want. I think that this episode is a bit cliché with having the pigs lie to their mother about being rich, as well as having them try to keep their mother being at Sneer Mansion a secret so that their lie isn't revealed. But I do like the moments with Mrs. Pig and her interacting with the other characters, and the ending where she and Cyril come to an agreement by putting her car in the competition after Cyril's car is destroyed, where she will get half of the winnings to rebuild her house. Overall, I'd say this is a cute episode with some nice character moments and an intense climactic chase scene, but does suffer from the liar reveal tropes, which may turn off some people.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This is an episode that I love for having a good message about not letting others tell you how to live your life. After taking a picture of Snag saving Cedric's life, Melissa is sought after by a world-famous magazine to be their new photographer. Ralph is all for her going, as it would be a great opportunity for her career, but she isn't sure about it. Meanwhile, Cyril is using Snag's fame to become a TV star after a producer hears about his heroics. However, after Snag escapes the car, taking him to Hollywood, Melissa, her new boss, and the producer try and save Cyril from a fallen tree he's been pinned under, and it's here that both Cyril and Melissa discover something about each other. The message in this episode is one that I personally can relate to, as I went through the same thing that Melissa had to go through with pursuing my career, and how a lot of people tried telling me what to do and how to live my life. But I was able to choose my own destiny regardless of what others told was best for me. As for the Cyril story, I think it's nice to see the relationship between him and Snag, as it's another example of Cyril caring about those he loves, even the family pet.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This is probably the episode that might have had a good message, but it's ruined by bad writing. The gang and Cyril feel that Cedric lacks any confidence or assertiveness and decide that he should go to a school that focuses on boosting his confidence and to be more assertive. Unfortunately, this leads to him acting so assertive that he no longer acts like the Cedric everyone knows and loves. So the gang and Cyril decide to band together to bring the old Cedric back by trying to show him that he doesn't need to depend on his book to be assertive. I found that this episode has a good idea for its message by showing that being assertive all the time isn't always a good thing, but I found that Cedric doesn't really act that different outside of constantly following his school's manual. I think a better example of the negative impact of being too assertive is the episode of Friendship is Magic, Putting Your Hoof Down, where Fluttershy goes too far with being assertive and ends up going too far with her assertiveness and ends up nearly ruining her relationship with her friends. I'm not saying that you need to have Cedric be screaming all the time, but maybe show him being more argumentative with the gang, or maybe show him not being interested in the others because of him wanting to do things that he felt he could never do because he wasn't confident enough to say so. At least then I would feel like his assertiveness was there and not just hinted at.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This episode is one that I'm split on because I like the premise and the climax, but the inclusion of Mr. Knox is the weakest part of it as he acts like a jackass. Bert, Cedric, and Schaefer discover an old abandoned train that was connected to a robbery by a famous outlaw who stole the equivalent of $10 million and decide to restore it and donate it to Lady Baden-Baden for historical preservation. Once Cyril discovers about the train from Cedric, he tries to steal the train in order to get the money to try and use it to pay back Mr. Knox after he loses a bet with him and tries to get Cyril to sell his house as collateral. I mostly like the episode for learning about the train, watching the climactic ending with Cyril trying to steal the train for the money, and seeing the characters try to rebuild it to give it to Lady Baden-Baden so that she can preserve it as a historical piece. However, the part of this episode I dislike is the inclusion of Mr. Knox being a jackass and trying to force Cyril and his family out of their home because he won their bet. I get that Cyril lost and that he wants something for collateral, but to throw someone out of their home rather than come to some sort of agreement where he can pay him back feels like a dick move, even for him. In the end, Cyril is saved by Lady Baden-Baden by making a deal in order to pay Mr. Knox back, but I still didn't like the way the writers handled him in this episode.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This is the second episode to feature Bentley, and not only is the episode better than his first appearance, he fortunately isn't annoying. Bert and Cedric are heading to their fort when they come across Bentley hiding out there after he got in trouble by changing his grades at school. Meanwhile, Cyril and the pigs are installing a new security system when the pigs accidentally spill some lemonade on the computer, where it malfunctions and traps them inside the mansion, where it's up to Bentley to use his computer to hack into the system and try to get them all out alive. This is probably the third or fourth episode where Cyril tries to upgrade a security system only for it to backfire on him, so the plot does feel a little repetitive, but I will admit that I like the moments with Bert and Bentley, as I like that Bert tries to be the older brother that Bentley never had. Plus, this episode is where we get introduced to Bentley's parents in a flashback he has. It's great character building, and it makes the episode with Bentley tolerable when the writers know what to do with him.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
A second jerk-themed episode, but one that doesn't pack quite as much of a punch as the one involving Bert. Ralph and Cyril have been nominated for 2 different awards, and they both each try to make sure they win the award, but end up acting like jerks, with Ralph wanting to publish a story that will wow the readers of the Standard, and Cyril trying to negotiate with the Bears after they go on strike. Honestly, this episode isn't that impressive compared to The Chips Are Down, as that episode sent a good message about the dangers of addiction, and this one is just Ralph and Cyril being dicks over winning a local award. I guess I just don't see the appeal of winning local awards when compared to winning something like an Oscar or a Nobel Prize, which have real-world applications for being able to make the best movie or being able to create/discover something that can help others.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
This episode is one that I remember watching a lot as a kid, and is one that expanded more on Cyril's background. Cyril's older brother Simon returns to the mansion after having been lost at sea for several years, wanting his half of the Sneer fortune while also taking time to bond with Cedric. However, Bert finds him suspicious and tries to prove to everyone that he's not who he says he is. But the gang of course find that hard to believe when they think that he's acting up from reading so many mystery novels. This is probably my favorite episode of this season, as it has most of the funniest moments in it, and I like that while Bert is going about it the wrong way, he is trying to prove to everyone that Simon isn't who he says he is because he doesn't want Cedric to be taken advantage of. Which I do like at the ending, Bert explaining how he put together that Simon isn't who he says he is, as it makes sense when he explains that he used actual detective work. A great episode that gave us quite the interesting mystery for a kid's show.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
Well, take a wild guess how this season ends. That's right, another goddamn clip show! Cyril is trying to escape from having to meet with his local tax collector. However, he ends up getting sent to a game show where he is asked questions by his friends and family to win a big prize. Normally I would say that this is the worst episode of the season, as it's just another annoying clip show episode that doesn't add anything, but I'll admit that this one is a lot better than the last season because of the writing and the funny ending. But that doesn't help the fact that it's still a clip show episode that you can skip and not miss anything from it.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
For this season's best episode, in my opinion, it's episode 10. While I said that episode 12 is the best written episode for the comedy and the ending is the best I've seen for the series, I personally prefer this episode because it has the best character moments of the show, at least between Bert and Bentley. I know I said before that Bentley was the scrappy do of this series, but so far he's not been too bad, and this episode is proof of that.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
Again, despite how much I hate clip show episodes, I feel like episode 11 is the worst of this season. It's the other episode that focuses on people being jerks, but unlike episode 3 where the episode had a good message about addiction and gambling, this episode is just annoying and treats its characters like idiots or are such jerks that they almost seem unforgivable. It's honestly just an episode that doesn't add anything special to the show and is more irritating to sit through than the clip show episode. At least that episode was well written.
When darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night.
Overall, this season is a much bigger improvement over the last season, which just focused too much on Cyril and Bert. I found the episodes in this season much more entertaining to return to than the previous two seasons, as it had better writing, and the comedy in this was also improved, which is what I've been looking forward to in this retrospective. I can only hope that the last two seasons are of at least the same quality, but we'll see what happens when we get to those later on. I give Season 3 a 7 out of 10. It definitely has the better episodes and makes me want more for the next two seasons. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover, cause you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.